Здравствуйте, comrade. It has come to our attention that you've been playing Amerikansky rock and roll music. It's no use to deny. We know what you're doing. What do you think you're doing? When I was your age, I carry Mosin Nagant. And you carry this sick, repulsive acoustic twanger. It's worthless and weak. What do you want to do for the party?
Hey there, gang. Well, here's an odd one. This is a Soviet-era acoustic guitar bought in 1983 at great expense. The owner paid for the fancy model, and he brought it with him when he came to Canada. So, in 20 years, I've come in contact with 3 Cold War-era Soviet guitars. Funny thing, in every case the owner was anxious to tell me that the tops on these were sourced from a famous manufacturer of pianos. So that must have been a really big selling point at the time. And that seems entirely possible. They're all multi-piece tops, like you would find on a piano soundboard. They're spruce strips about 3.5 inches wide, like 90 millimeters. It's really nice spruce. I've never taken the time to investigate the tonewood market in Russia, but you would imagine that they have pretty good material there with all those expansive northern forests. Back and sides on these are laminated. The wood doesn't match, but it's similar color. And the finish on these, they're always like an open pore finish. It's a pretty thickly applied thing, whatever it is, varnish of some sort. The binding in this case has been dyed green. I think it's probably birch. The necks on these are interesting. They're a stack of laminated birch that's been stained a bit. And on this one it looks like it's got a beechwood fingerboard. And they attach to the body with a screw. It's a bolt-on system. But it's actually adjustable to tilt the neck. There's a captured bolt in here. And you use a special key. Looks like a square drive, like a drum key. And you can wind the screw in and out, and it will tilt the neck. So the fingerboard extension is free of the body. Little history there. This is the system that Johann Scherzer came up in the mid-1800s. And it was the standard for Viennese makers, the Viennese classical guitar tradition, for a very long time. And the Austro-Hungarian guys, they started putting extra strings on. Those were the guitars that made their way into Russia and became standard. 7-string guitars were the usual thing there until well past the Second World War. The rest of the neck is kind of crude. It's a little narrower than your standard modern classical here at the nut. The owner said they were making 7 strings with 6 as an option, and that's what he ordered. So I guess it's possible they used the same neck and just widened the string spacing for the 6-string model. It's just under 2 inches, 50 millimeters. So it's pretty chunky for a steel string. And the profile in the back is very much like a classical too. It's very flat. Could take some getting used to if you're not, a classical player. But this thing was definitely built for steel strings. Looking at the profile of the neck, it seems to have been cut to shape using something like a sanding drum with a very aggressive paper on it. Or maybe a shaper cutter that had been in use for years and years and never sharpened, because it's got these striations like from nicks in the blade. It's almost like alligator teeth were raked across it there. And I think he took off the original tuners and put on some better ones here, because I don't think that Grover stay-tights were a staple in your typical Soviet music store. So the reason it's here, the bridge is lifting a bit and it needs to be re-glued. Now anytime we see decorative dot inlays on a bridge, we should suspect that they're concealing screws or bolts. So we'll take this off, figure out what's going on, and glue it back down. The other thing is, originally this had a fret wire saddle, which probably wasn't in the right place. And at some point a little piece of plastic or bone was put on here to get better intonation. So we're going to route this out for him and put in a regular saddle. So before I take the strings off, I'm just checking to see how close the intonation is. And it's not bad at all. So I think we should mark that before I take the strings off. What's worse than a slotted headstock? Slotted headstock with the entire string from the very tip wound on it. In Soviet Union, guitar string winds you. The interior is pretty clean. It's a ladder brace guitar. They seem to be using a white polyvinyl glue. There's a nice dark pencil line denoting the center line of the top. What's really interesting is I see no evidence of bolts or screws from those inlays. It's possible they just go right into the top and don't extend into the interior, but what makes me suspicious is there isn't even a bridge pad in here, so they have to be pretty shallow screws. We shall see. See if I can pry these out. Okay. I feel glue, but I don't feel a screw. That's bizarre. Okay. Got to run this at slightly lower heat because this bridge has a thick coating of varnish on it, which is likely going to soften before the glue, and given that it's also been stained, could make a mess of things. So just be gentle with it and let it take its time.
The bridge came off pretty cleanly. Here I'm scraping off glue residue and any wood fibers that were stuck to it. And it seems to be made out of beech, the same thing as the fingerboard. Interesting to note, you'll see that there are 2 holes in it, which run through from those pockets for the inlays. So I suspect this was actually designed to be bolted down. Perhaps they ran out of hardware.
Okay, I scraped and sanded the footprint clean here and took a piece of 220 grit self-adhesive sandpaper and put it down there in the footprint. And I'm going to sand the bottom of the bridge. There was a slight dish still in the back here, which I want to get rid of. It's not easy. In this case, they made the ends of the bridge into like a knife edge. It's down to like a point. So any reduction in the height of the bridge is also going to reduce the width slightly. Not ideal, but I think we can do enough touch-up to make that disappear. And it's probably better having a bridge that fits than a perfectly clean outline.
Gluing the bridge on proceeded as usual. My camera has been giving me problems, and I lost a bunch of footage on this one. I routed a new saddle slot, made a new saddle, did the setup work, polished the frets. I have ordered a new one, and it is theoretically on its way to me now, so hopefully this won't happen again.
This rosette is, I think, designed to mimic a Spanish-style marquetry rosette, but I think it's actually printed on a piece of paper that was glued to the top surface of the soundboard. It's raised, and unfortunately, it looks like the printing plates got a little bit off register there. It's not quite lining up, but I think that's kind of fun. I like that. Alright, I think we're ready to call this one done. I made and installed the saddle, set it up. The string action is actually very nice. It is a bit of a bear to play, though, if we're being honest. A couple of reasons. It's full classical size scale length, 650 millimeters. And when you take the steel string up to that length, it starts to feel a bit stiff under the fingers, at least to me. And string spacing. At the saddle here, it's a full 60 millimeter spread, which is, you're getting towards the outer limits there. A lot of people would find that too wide. It's fine for me. I don't mind it at all. But, you know, more than anything, it's that neck. It is a very big neck. You get used to it, but I don't think you'd ever be a speed demon on this thing. Anyway, it sounds really nice. I've got it tuned up in Dadgad, which is, I think, what it came to me with. It's very resonant, very loud. It's a good sounding guitar.